2 years after we embarked on yet another managerial change, there is more switching and swapping and everything going on at Tottenham Hotspur. Thomas Frank has been announced as the new head coach, replacing Ange Postecoglou, who was sacked on the 2-year anniversary of him joining the club. Thomas Frank has signed a 3-year contract and is bringing a whole haul of his staff from Brentford over to North London, which is a very significant thing, really, because a lot of the time, maybe managers you'll see bring 2 or 3 coaches over. The fact that he's able to bring 5 names of his own to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think is going to be a massive benefit for Spurs. It's going to be a huge change for the players and the general atmosphere inside the training ground. One of those people is his assistant coach, Justin Cochrane. I don't know if I've pronounced that properly, so forgive me if I haven't. But he was being touted by Brentford as Frank's potential replacement. He has history with the club. He used to coach in our academy. He works with England. He worked at Manchester United, and he is revered and regarded as one of the top coaches in the country. So the fact that Frank has managed to convince him to come to Tottenham with him is a huge boost, in my opinion, for the club. There is just so much going on. In the aftermath of Thomas Frank being appointed as a new Tottenham boss, there are several reports circulating suggesting that he wants to bring Bryan Mbeumo to Tottenham with him, and that the player himself is now much more interested in a move to the club now that Frank is in charge. Of course, we know that Frank has been able to get the best out of Mbeumo for the last couple of seasons, at the very least in West London. So Manchester United, I think, are maybe feeling a little bit nervous now, especially with the fact that Spurs have just lodged a claim against Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe for pulling out of a 5-year sponsorship deal. So it's all going on. There's just so much changing across the club, and you could argue that it's going to be for the better. Thomas Frank is a fantastic coach, there's no doubt about it, and he will adapt to every single opponent that Tottenham play in his time at the club. Like I say, he is contracted at the club until 2028, so it's sort of like a halfway point between what Daniel Levy offered Ange Postecoglou in a long-term deal, as opposed to what they offered Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, where they only signed 2-year deals with the club. So that's a change in and around itself. The other thing is we're probably going to see a lot more focus on particular players coming through the youth academy, through the setup. Thomas Frank is brilliant and renowned for developing talent and working with the tools he's got. And a lot of you Spurs fans might be sat there and thinking, this is just not what we need. We need to go out there and sign established world-class talent almost. And I agree with you 100%. Spurs do need to do something like that. We need to bring in at least a number 6, I think a winger. Son's maybe on his way out, a striker, maybe even a couple of other positions as well. But yeah, we don't unfortunately have control over that, and Thomas Frank, he will get what he's given. It does seem like he is a suitable character and type for Daniel Levy to work with. I think Johan Langer was leading the recruitment drive for Thomas Frank to come to Spurs, and Daniel Levy was fully on board with that. And I guess you could say that that marks not a very big change at the club. But yeah, maybe the likes of Mikey Moore will thrive under Thomas Frank. Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, Brennan Johnson. Thomas Frank was desperate to bring Brennan Johnson to Brentford before Spurs signed him from Nottingham Forest. So I would imagine that he's going to play a very important role for the club when he does get settled in and go in. And yes, we will play some competitive games against English opposition before we go on tour. But in our pre-season tour at the end of July, the first sort of big game that Thomas Frank is going to be in charge of is going to be against Arsenal. So that's some introduction. We've obviously got Bayern Munich on the horizon as well. Harry Kane against Spurs once again, and then the Super Cup against PSG will be one of his first competitive games. I think it takes place roughly around like 2 weeks into the new season, so he's going to be thrown straight into the deep end. It's going to be a huge change for him. The question is, and this is my big qualm around the appointment, can Thomas Frank deal with the pressure, deal with the expectation of being Tottenham Hotspur manager? What did he spend? Like 7 years at Brentford. He did a fantastic job, but he's used to having lower expectations. Brentford I probably sat there thinking they're very lucky and content to be a Premier League side, and they owe a lot of that success to Thomas Frank and getting them promoted and turning them into the force that they are now, which is a very good team, of course. They finished 7 places above Spurs last season, so there's no diss in Brentford here at all. But Thomas Frank has never managed Europe alongside a Premier League campaign. He has not dealt with the ambition and the pressure that comes with managing a big club like Tottenham. And the difficult thing is for him, he comes in after Ange Postecoglou, who probably leaves with a bit of a legendary legacy because he was that guy to end our trophy drought. 17 years, of course, we all know the number, the figure. And Thomas Frank comes in, and if he doesn't perform straight away, and if he doesn't hit the ground running with Spurs, it's going to be very easy for fans to turn on him very quickly. That's the main concern for me. We talk about rebuild after rebuild after rebuild, and we've gone through another manager cycle where it's not lasted longer than 2 years. And I say this every time we appoint a new manager, and I want to say it now to camera so that I've got it on the record. I want Thomas Frank to succeed, and I want him to do really well. But I may look back on this video in a year and a half, 2 years, and sit here thinking, what a disaster again. So it's just, in my opinion, it's a safe appointment from the club. Thomas Frank is a safe appointment, whereas Ange Postecoglou's appointment was a risk. I guess you could say that this is another change, that Thomas Frank will come in and stabilise. He will adapt. He will play a 4-3-3. He'll play a 4-3-2-1. He'll play a 3-5-2. Whatever he needs to do to give himself and his team the best opportunity to beat teams in the Premier League, in Europe, in the cup competitions, and that's probably going to be the biggest change between Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham and Thomas Frank's Tottenham. Whereas Ange will refuse to adapt his idea, his philosophy, and he never did in the Premier League against any side he played. He wanted to be on the front foot, he wanted to press high, he wanted to score plenty of goals. Thomas Frank will not do that. He is more pragmatic, he is more adaptive than Ange Postecoglou, and we will see perhaps, when we play Leeds or when we play Sheffield United or Burnley next season, we will be on the front foot, we will be that dominant side. But perhaps when we go to Anfield, when we go to the Etihad or the Emirates, we will perhaps close up, make it difficult to break us down. We will play on the counter-attack. And I tell you what, if we bring in someone like Mbeumo or Eze to the team over the summer, I think that will be perfect for the way that Thomas Frank wants to play at Tottenham Hotspur. I just feel like the atmosphere of the club when he walks through the door is going to be really, really strange. It's going to be almost somber. I mean, Cuti Romero put out a post thanking Ange literally right after Thomas Frank was announced as manager. So there's problems in itself there. Is he going to stay? Whereas Ange Postecoglou had to walk into a club that had just lost Harry Kane or was losing Harry Kane. Thomas Frank may have to do the same with Christian Romero if he does go. And I really hope he doesn't, by the way, because I just think he's a world-class, amazing defender, one of, if not the best in the world. But again, that's out of our control. So yeah, there's a lot of change coming up at Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm really excited. I do want to put it out there. I'm really excited to see what Thomas Frank can do for the club, how he can introduce a whole different way of playing, and what he's going to do to get fans on side. Because whereas Ange was so charismatic, and the way he spoke to the press, I think Spurs fans actually liked it. There maybe were a minority that did not. I feel like Thomas Frank does always know the right things to say. He has a very good relationship with the press and the journalists that do the weekly interviews with him and stuff in the press conferences, whereas Ange maybe didn't necessarily have that. So automatically, the media may be a bit kinder to Thomas Frank. They may give him a bit more time, and time is something you can't afford to waste at Tottenham Hotspur, because we've just won our first trophy in 17 years, and boy, are we hungry for more. Thomas Frank is going to be expected to challenge for the top 4 places next season. He's going to be expected to challenge in the cup competitions, do well at least in the Champions League, because I think we can all sit here and admit we're not a top side at the moment. But it's exciting times. It's been officially confirmed, and now we can finally move on to transfers and getting deals over the line for whoever it may be. We do need to start moving, start acting, because before you know it, you snap your fingers and the new season is underway. It's ready and it's going. So there's a lot of work to be done for Thomas Frank. He's in the door now. It's confirmed. He's said his goodbyes to Brentford. It is full steam ahead, and I'm really looking forward to keeping an eye on what he does. I will be here with videos for all of the massive things that happen. Of course, I'll be here for transfer updates, tactical breakdowns, analysis, post-match, pre-match reviews, everything of the sort. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please hit that subscribe button down below and join the journey as we enter another new era at Tottenham Hotspur. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy the lovely sunshine, and I will see you in the next one. As always, come on you Spurs.